Hello. Thank you so much for that very warm welcome. My name is Kate Norton-Towlson. I am a communications specialist with Heart Communications. I have a master's degree in business communication, and I have been working with local businesses for the last 15 years on helping them improve communication internally and externally. Today I'm going to speak with you about, you guessed it, communication. Some of you are thinking, hey, we communicate every day. Work gets done, business is completed. While that may be true, how many of us have sent an email only to receive a response asking for clarification? Or we receive a text message that comes in a way that we feel is snarky. Just because we communicate every day doesn't always mean we communicate effectively. Communication, in its most basic, is the sharing of thoughts and ideas with others. This is accomplished in written, verbal, and nonverbal form. To be a successful communicator with our business associates, it's important to understand why effective communication matters. Effective communication begins with the 3 P's. Prepare. You must be organized. Gather all the information you wish to communicate and put it into an organized form. Be clear and concise. By knowing your audience, this will enable you to create a clear concept of what you want to communicate. Practice often and be persistent. Don't give up. Be ethical. Believe and demonstrate to the audience that you believe all people are equal and deserve respect. Build a rapport with your audience by introducing yourself and give a brief description of your background. It's a great way to begin to build a trusting relationship between you and your audience. Let's talk about the written word. So many people avoid sitting down and writing. Why is that? Experts say it's because people tend to avoid. They avoid things that they have a negative view of or something that they fear. Fear of failure to deliver the message successfully and fear of how the message will receive play into this avoidance. So how do we mitigate the fear of writing? Be proactive. Work on developing your writing skills. Keep writing for the sake of development. Set goals that are reasonable and start out small. Don't give up. Be persistent. Utilize the resources around you to develop those skills, especially your peers, by asking for constructive feedback. Finally, lose the perfectionist mentalities. When writing, plan on rough drafts and lots of them. Rome wasn't built in a day, but if you work on the 3 P's, I guarantee you will be a better communicator. When communicating, you also have to be aware. Aware of yourself, including your attitudes, beliefs, and values. It's important to remember that these are going to come across when communicating and will have an effect on how the audience perceives you. Project yourself openly and honestly and avoid bias at all times. You can't fool your audience, folks, so it's important to know who you'll be communicating to or with. This enables you to draft a communication that will speak to the audience to capture and hold their attention. Keep the communication simple and easy for the audience to follow. Avoid jargon whenever possible and know your audience so that they understand what you're communicating. Keep it simple. Know your audience. When drafting written communication, I highly recommend you proofread your work. This will assist you in avoiding embarrassing typos and poor punctuation and spelling errors. Remember, you reflect your organization. Sloppy written communication with these types of errors will have a lasting bad impression for the reader and could result in loss of business. No abbreviations. Save that for text messaging your pals on Monday Night Football. And finally, plan out what you're going to write with the goal of making a lasting good impression. Now we're going to move on to communication style. Whether it be written communication or verbal communication, you need to decide whether or not it will be formal or informal. Then you need to consider your resources. When researching, only gather information from those sources that you know to be credible and legitimate, especially when you're utilizing the web. And lastly, always practice sound business ethics. Avoid bias. Don't omit facts that don't agree with your point of view. This will mislead the audience. And always cite your sources. Whatever means of written communication, stay organized. Focus only on those key points and takeaways you want the audience or the reader to remember. Determining whether the communication should be formal or informal will be based on your audience or your reader. That's why knowing your audience is critical when developing the communication. Once you have determined whether or not the communication is going to be formal or informal, next you must decide if what you're going to communicate will be informational, or persuasive. Informative communication, whether written or verbal, is just that. It's information. It's the sharing of information with others. It can enforce currently held beliefs or provide education to the audience to help them learn a new skill. Effective persuasive communication, however, is done to change the audience's point of view, beliefs, or judgment. How effective you will be in persuading the audience really depends upon how well you have organized your communication, and if you have successfully communicated your purpose. How do we persuade? Have examples ready in order to encourage the audience to think about your point of view. Don't ignore opposing points of view. Present them as well with a follow-up argument that supports what you're presenting. This lends credibility to you as you are acknowledging all sides of the coin, but have solid arguments and information that support your idea. Sprinkle your presentation or your communication with equal amounts of passion and logic. If you're passionate about something, it's catching, and soon you're going to be winning over your audience. Too much passion and it's seen as overzealous, and you risk losing your audience altogether. Know that there's always going to be some resistance within the audience, so it's important to prepare for the reader's expectation. So acknowledge those alternate ideas and use a follow-up argument to support your theory. Again, how well you convey your argument with supporting research and facts will determine your ability to win over the crowd. 5 key things to remember when drafting a successful persuasive communication. Stimulate your audience by reinforcing their existing beliefs. Then find common ground and build on that. Your goal is to convince them. Do this by developing key points and examples to present in order to encourage the audience to at least consider your topic. Focus on the action you want the audience to take. This stimulates their curiosity and increases their ability to at least consider your point of view. If you're successful, these steps will ultimately lead to the audience developing tolerance to an idea or thought that is different from their own. Texting and email in business. Email has replaced most hard copy correspondence within the business world. For email to be effective, remember, emails need to be brief, just 3 small paragraphs. Always be professional when drafting an email, and never put anything in an email you wouldn't want your CEO to read. Emails should always contain a subject line so that the reader knows what the subject of the email is prior to opening. And be sure to begin your emails with a greeting. And always include a signature line that contains your contact information. So in case the reader wants to reach out to you in a means other than email, they have that option. Properly format your email and keep it clean and organized. And also know proper email etiquette by avoiding abbreviations and those shouty caps. Remember, you cannot tell context in an email. Finally, read, revise, and review. Never draft an email and hit send. Text messaging should really only be utilized when absolutely necessary in business. The same rules of email apply to text messaging. Messages should be brief with short exchanges. No run-on sentences or messages. While text messaging is convenient, again, its use should be limited when no other option for communication is available. For text messaging and email to be effective in business, remember who you are talking to. Remember who you're emailing and texting, and ensure professionalism at all times. To prevent misinterpretations, avoid shouty caps and abbreviations such as LOL, TTYL. These types of abbreviations are unprofessional and they may not be known to the recipient. Again, know who you're communicating with. Don't overuse or abuse text messaging, and never text and drive. Now that we've discussed communication at length, let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. Ineffective communication creates barriers, whether the communication is written or spoken, or through nonverbal means. Nonverbal communication is body language. This is lack of eye contact, slouching, crossing one's arms. These type of body language behaviors communicate negativity. It also could communicate lack of confidence or anger. It's important to avoid generalizations of cultures and groups that tends to infer bias or stereotyping. All of these behaviors lead to ineffective communication, which results in a barrier between you, the sender, and the audience or the receiver. According to a recent article I read by Cindy Measom, there are some other types of behaviors that contribute to ineffective communication, and we should work to avoid them at all costs. Lack of enthusiasm. If you're not excited about what you're communicating, why should anyone else be? Be passionate and motivate your listeners to care about what you're communicating. Avoid the monotone voice and neutral expressions. Be engaging. Avoid interrupting. Ever try to tell a story and someone interrupts you before you make it through? It's annoying, right? Interruptions show a lack of respect for the speaker and will more than likely offend them. Indirectness is another ineffective communication behavior identified by Measom. When dealing with people, whether customers or coworkers, speak clearly and directly about the topic. Don't count on the audience to understand. They aren't holding a crystal ball. You have to communicate it plainly to avoid misinterpretation and misunderstanding. Closed-mindedness. A closed-minded communicator will never be successful. A communicator that refuses to acknowledge an opposing point of view or alternatives will alienate the audience. Never use filler words such as so to say. These filler phrases make what you're trying to say sound unclear and inconcise. They also make you sound unsure of what you're talking about. And finally, whining and complaining. Avoid it. People are put off by it and will attempt to tune you out or avoid listening. Now let's talk about some do's. Do be relatable. Engage your audience and find common ground. Do emphasize key points, even if you have to be repetitive in order to bring home those key points. Actively listen. This means repeating back what was said to confirm what you heard is accurate. This reduces the possibility of misunderstanding. Have a good sense of humor. Peppering your verbal communication will often put others at ease, but be careful not to offend. Respond timely to emails. This is not only effective, but shows respect and is good manners. People will appreciate you being on top of messages and leaves them feeling valued. Always be prepared at all times. Be Johnny on the spot. Be that guy. When appropriate, use analogies. This is an easy way to get everyone on the same page and works to resolve conflicts in some cases. Be present for those you're interacting with. This opens a channel for all to feel heard and understood. That means putting your phones on vibrate when you're communicating with one person or 20 people. Find your own voice by letting your values show through when communicating. This comes across as open and honest. Put your audience at ease, and this can be done simply by being yourself. Customize your communication style to adapt to your audience and acknowledge everyone has a different way of learning. Finally, rather than making assumptions or misinterpreting, ask. Avoid assumptions, they are always wrong. We've talked a lot today about communication, and as I wrap up, I'd like to end with the benefits you can reap for yourself and your organization when you communicate effectively. The first benefit of effective communication is the receiver understands and there is no miscommunications or misinterpretations. The message is clear. 2, with misunderstanding and misinterpretations eliminated, your credibility is established and you're free to inform or persuade the receiver of your message. 3, with your credibility established, the basis for your relationship has been set. You're now free to move forward with continuing the building of the relationship. 4, the first 3 points result in the strengthening of your credibility, not just as a communicator with your customers, but as a coworker as well. Thank you so much for your attention today. I hope you found my presentation not only informative, but perhaps somewhat persuasive. Thank you.